Fortunately, there's hopefully very few sleepless nights and no diaper changes required when parenting in Adobe After Effects. Parenting simply refers to the technique of linking one layer to another in terms of its transform, that is, its position, scale and rotation. Moving and animating the parent will automatically move and animate all of its children relative to the parent. Sounds easy enough? It sure is. Let's jump into Adobe After Effects and build ourselves a small and horrendously inaccurate model of our solar system. We're once again going to start with an empty project, and let's start out by importing all of the images that we need for this lesson. In the course material, under the Images folder, you will find a whole bunch of different planets, so select all of those as well as the Witch Head Nebula. You don't need to select the raised snail unless you want to have a snail in space, and let's import everything into our project. Grab the Witch Head Nebula image and drag it onto the new composition icon to create a new composition. Make sure this composition is around about 10 to 20 seconds long, so we have plenty of space for our animation. And now, come up into your project panel, grab the sun and drop the image of the sun right on top of your nebula. I'm going to scale the sun down just a little bit, and again, remember to hold down Shift to scale this layer uniformly. And yes, I know the sun doesn't really belong into the Witch Head Nebula, but as I said, we're not trying in any way to create anything that is astronomically correct. We're just trying to have some fun, creating some cool animation and learning about parenting. Now, right now, everything is very static, so let's add a little bit of rotation to the sun. For that, select the sun layer, press R to reveal the rotation property, and you can now keyframe this to rotate the sun for the length of your composition. However, for continuous animation, it's much easier to add a simple expression. And again, no stress, we've done this before in the track mattes tutorial when we created the animated noise. Simply hold down Alt on your keyboard or Option if you're on a Mac and click on this little stopwatch icon next to the rotation property. This is going to pop open a little text editor, the expression editor. In here, make sure you select everything and clear everything out and simply type time*20. And now, if you click outside of the expression editor and scrub through your composition, the sun will continuously rotate without any keyframes. Now let's add the first planet into our fake solar system, and let's start out with Venus. So grab Venus and drop it at the top of your layers into your composition. It's probably a little bit too big. I'd probably want this to be a little bit smaller than the sun, and let's move this over to the right hand side. And again, we do want Venus to continuously rotate, so select the layer, press R to reveal the rotation property, hold down Alt or Option and click onto the little stopwatch icon. And let's say I want to rotate Venus just a little bit quicker than the sun, so I'm going to type time*30, click outside of the expression editor, and now if I scrub through, I can see the Venus and sun rotate. Now, however, we need Venus to rotate around the sun as well as around itself. For that, your first instinct might be to come to the beginning of your composition, reveal the position property on Venus and add a keyframe. Maybe we'll go to 2 seconds, move Venus to the bottom. Let's go to 4 seconds, move Venus over to the left-hand side, go to 6 seconds, move Venus to the top and go to 8 seconds and then move Venus down to the right-hand side. But if you play this back, it actually looks kind of clunky and really weird, and it just doesn't really work. Now, one of the things you can actually do with keyframes, and I haven't touched on that yet, if you select all of your keyframes, After Effects can show you the path that this object is going to move. In order to see this motion path, as it's called, simply come up into your preferences under Edit, Preferences, and then go to Display. And in the Display tab, you will have options to reveal the motion path. So I could say, reveal me the motion path for all keyframes, hit OK. And now, with these keyframes selected, I hope you can see it. There's a little path drawn right now that shows me how this object is going to move. Now, it's a little bit hard to see, but all of my path points actually have these Bezier handles that I can activate by clicking on these points. And this allows me to kind of smoothen out this path and drag this out so it's not so stiff. So it kind of gets a little bit more of a rounded movement, and we can kind of fake Venus is going around the sun in, somewhat of a circle. So that's kind of looking a little bit more natural, but it's really just clunky, right? It doesn't continue. You'd have to add more and more keyframes, and it just doesn't really work very well. So let's come to the beginning of the composition and disable the keyframes on the position property. What we can do instead, much easier, we can simply parent Venus to the sun. Now, it's important to note that the sun itself is a layer, and the anchor point for the sun is right in the center of the sun. if you now take Venus, and over on the right hand side you'll find this column for parent. Right now, Venus's parent is set to none. However, you can use this little twirly, this little pick whip icon, click on that and drag. That gives you something to connect this layer to. And let's select the sun. So we're going to parent the Venus layer to the sun. So let go over the sun, and you'll see this little drop down here change to the sun. You can also just use this drop down to select a parent. But now what will happen if I scrub through my composition? Whoa. Can you see how Venus automatically follows the movement of the sun? By parenting these two layers together, we now essentially bound Venus's transform, including position, scale, and rotation, to the position, scale, and rotation of its parent, of the sun. So if I now move the sun, I will move Venus. If I scale the sun up or down, I will scale up and down Venus. And obviously, if the sun rotates, Venus will rotate along with it. It is important to note that all transforms, all scales, and all rotation happens around the anchor point of the parent, of the sun. So Venus will move around the center point of the sun. It will scale outwards from that center point, and it will move along with the center point of the sun. Let's bring the scale of the sun up again a little bit so it's not quite that tiny. And it is important to note that you can still freely move Venus around to anywhere that you want. Then if you scrub through, it'll simply transform relative to its parent from its new position. So if I go back to the beginning, move Venus back to the right hand side and start scrubbing through, it just follows along. If I move Venus anywhere else, I can scale it down or up in any way. Again, it will simply follow along with everything that happens with its parent. Let's bring it back into its original spot, and let's bring in the Earth. So grab the Earth image and drop that at the top of your composition. And again, let's just say this is a little bit smaller than the sun. Maybe we'll make this approximately the size of Venus. And I'm going to move this over a little bit more to the left because when the Earth swings around, I don't want it to collide with Venus. So let's bring this over a little bit to the left-hand side. And let's also bring in the moon. Now, the moon obviously should not be bigger than Earth. So let's scale this down by quite a bit and place this somewhere on the edge of Earth. And now select the Earth, press R to reveal the rotation because I do want the Earth to again rotate around itself. Hold down Alt or Option, click on the rotation property, and let's have Earth rotate the other way. So let's type in time star minus 25. Click outside of the expression editor, and now Earth will rotate anti-clockwise. Now let's add some rotation to the moon. Select the moon, press R, hold down Alt and Option, again click onto that stopwatch icon. This time I'm just going to make it rotate very slowly, so enter time star 10, and obviously feel free to vary this in any way that you want. So now we have the moon rotate just very slowly. And again, let's link the moon to the Earth so the moon rotates around the center of the Earth. For that, select your moon layer and either pick whip the Earth, or in this drop down here, simply change this from none over to Earth. So we're now specifying the Earth as the parent of the moon. And now if you scrub through, the moon will rotate around the Earth. Pretty cool. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to parent the Earth to the sun, because you can stagger, you can kind of hierarchically build entire structures of parents to their children, and all of those transforms will propagate correctly. So let's come onto the Earth layer over on the right hand side, take that pick whip icon, and let's select the sun to parent the Earth to the sun. And now, that is pretty cool. We've got the Earth kind of moving out of bounds a little bit. So what I might actually want to do, let's bring the Earth closer just a little bit so we can kind of see both of them at least. So now you've got the Earth and Venus rotating around the sun and the moon rotating around the Earth. Let me quickly collapse all of my layers. And because of this hierarchy that we've set up, the moon being parented to the Earth means that any change to the Earth will also be applied to the moon. And because the Earth in turn is parented to the sun, means that if I move the sun, I'm going to move all of the planets. Parenting is really useful if you want to have one layer follow another, which you tend to do in motion tracking a lot, which again is probably something for another tutorial series altogether. But you can also just use it to affect one layer with another, set up little animation hierarchies, and create all sorts of cool effects. And best of all, parenting is actually super, super simple.